Imagine you've spent months, right? Like maybe even years writing this absolute perfect script for a play.
Oh, wow. Yeah, a total masterpiece.
Exactly. You've painstakingly mapped out every single line of dialogue. The stage directions are flawless. The lighting cues are timed to the absolute millisecond.
Right, you have total control over the vision.
But then, opening night arrives, you sit in the director's chair, the curtain goes up, and the actors walk out onto the stage. But within, 5 seconds, you realize something totally horrifying.
Let me guess. They're going off script.
Completely. None of them have read your script. They are entirely ad-libbing. They're ignoring their marks. They're shouting over each other. And they are completely oblivious to the beautiful, orderly masterpiece you created for them.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It's a disaster. And instead of adjusting your own expectations, you just spend the entire performance sitting in the dark, silently fuming, just exhausted, desperately trying to telepathically force these actors to say the lines you wrote.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a living nightmare for any director.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a recipe for unrelenting burnout.
Definitely.
Because you're tying your internal state of peace entirely to the external actions of people who are, well, completely outside of your control. You're choosing to sit in the dark, suffering, because reality is refusing to conform to the ideal vision in your head.
And that feeling, that exact feeling of sitting in the dark, fuming at the actors on the stage of life, is exactly where we're starting today.
It's such a relatable place to start.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you here with us. And yes, I am talking directly to you, the listener, sitting right there joining us as the third person in this conversation.
Glad to have you with us.
Today we are exploring something really profound, truly life-altering stuff. We're looking at the immense, transformative impact of meditating, relaxing your thought stream, and entirely reframing how you perceive reality.
Which is huge.
Huge. And we're exploring this primarily through the highly analytical lens of the INFJ personality type. But more broadly, we're unpacking the universal human struggle of trying to interact with an outside world that is frankly, entirely unaccommodating.
Yeah, it's a struggle that almost everyone listening to this can relate to, regardless of how their brain is wired.
Right.
But it is particularly acute for those who are highly empathetic, deeply analytical, and just intensely invested in maintaining harmony.
For sure. And the core philosophy we're synthesizing today comes from a pair of deeply insightful explorations on the importance of relaxing your thought stream and how individuals, particularly INFJs, can master that internal current to find lasting peace.
It's some incredibly powerful source material.
It is. The mission for this deep dive is bold, honestly. We want to help you stop handing over the authorship of your life to other people. We're going to unpack the ultimate internal rootkit of human perception.
The rootkit. I love that phrasing.
Right. The goal here is to help you shift your intense focus away from trying to control the chaotic external world and instead pivot toward mastering your own internal thoughts. Because the core argument here is that when you master the internal, you don't just feel a little better on the inside, you fundamentally transform your external reality.
It's a total paradigm shift.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start right at the beginning with this intense desire we all have for the world to just cooperate.
Yeah, it has to be easy for once.
Exactly. We all have this strong, incredibly exhausting need for our environment to accommodate us. We want people to behave in predictable, considerate ways.
Because we navigate the world expecting a certain baseline of reciprocity. We think, well, if I am considerate of your space, you should be considerate of mine.
Which makes logical sense.
It does. But the reality of human interaction is far messier. We inevitably encounter individuals who completely lack that self-awareness. I mean, the philosophy we're examining, Riley, refers to them as those wonderful narcissists.
Oh, I love that. Those wonderful narcissists.
Right. Or even just everyday people who are completely oblivious to our comfort zones. When the world fails to deliver that baseline consideration, which it almost always does, we experience a profound, grinding friction.
We really do.
And the psychological trap we fall into is that we try to solve this friction by working harder. We put an arduous amount of effort into pleasing others, into smoothing over conflicts, into being the perfect friend, the ideal employee, the endlessly accommodating partner.
And beneath all that arduous work, beneath the people-pleasing and the conflict resolution, there's a secret burning wish.
Oh, absolutely.
We're secretly hoping that if we just put in enough effort, people will finally get us, that they'll look at all the energy we're expending and naturally respond by accommodating our needs without us ever having to actually demand it.
We want them to just intuitively intuitively read the script we wrote for them.
Exactly. But here is the harsh, illuminating truth about that dynamic. When you pursue external validation, when you exhaust yourself trying to please people so that they will treat you a certain way, you are fundamentally asking other people to change.
Yes, you're making your internal peace contingent on their external behavior. You're waiting for the actors to suddenly remember their lines.
Roach, they won't.
No, they won't. And by doing that, you're setting yourself up for continuous, agonizing disappointment. Because people are inherently complex, driven by their own self-interest, and generally completely unaware of the invisible expectations you've placed upon them.
I mean, I struggle with this concept a bit, I have to admit.
How so?
Well, if we know what makes us comfortable, if we know our own boundaries and what we need to function at our best, why shouldn't we ask the world to meet us halfway?
Fair question.
Like, is it really so wrong to want your environment to be accommodating? It feels like if I'm putting in the work to be a good, considerate person, the universe owes me a little bit of comfort in return.
It definitely feels that way.
It makes me think of an analogy. Imagine you're trying to perfectly arrange all the furniture in a living room. You want the heavy oak sofa exactly centered. You want the lamp at the perfect angle for reading. You want the rug completely flat so nobody trips.
Right. You have a vision for a perfectly comfortable, harmonious room.
Exactly. But the problem is, this living room happens to be on a ship.
Yeah.
And not just any ship, but a ship navigating through a turbulent, stormy ocean.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The floor is constantly pitching and rolling. You're spending all your energy sweating, exhausting yourself, throwing your back out, trying to perfectly position this heavy armchair. You finally get it exactly where you want it. You let go. You take a breath.
And the ship rolls violently to the left.
Yes, the chair slides completely across the room and smashes into the wall. You are trying to control something that is fundamentally out of your grasp. You can't control the ocean, and you can't control the ship.
That visual captures the futility of the situation perfectly.
Yeah.
You are micromanaging the furniture while entirely ignoring the fundamental reality of the ocean.
This is so exhausting.
It is. When you demand that the situation adapt to you, when you demand that the actors read your script or that the furniture stays put on a rolling deck, you are technically trying to define your life. You're trying to act as the author of your own story, which feels empowering.
Right. It feels like taking charge.
But paradoxically, by making your piece dependent on those external factors cooperating, you are actually handing the pen over to others to complete the script. You give away your power entirely.
Handing the pen over, that is such a striking, terrifying image.
It really is.
You're holding the pen, you write the first half of the sentence for your day like, today I will be happy, productive, and peaceful, and then you hand the pen to your micromanaging boss, or your stressed out spouse, or the random aggressive person who cuts you off in traffic.
And I say, here, you finish the sentence for me.
And of course they write something terrible. They write, as long as I yell at you about a deadline that isn't your fault, or as long as I ignore your text message for 8 hours, you literally gave them the pen.
And the moment you hand over that pen, you surrender your autonomy. Seeking external validation is a complete abdication of your internal power.
Wow.
Because if your emotional state requires someone else to change their behavior, you are no longer the master of your own thought stream. You are a hostage to their whims.
That is so true.
If the narcissist in your office decides to be difficult today, your entire day is ruined. If the world doesn't understand your specific comfort zone, you feel alienated, resentful, and utterly exhausted. You're letting a chaotic, unaccommodating world write the story of your internal life.
Think about your own life for a second, speaking directly to you, the listener. Think about your average Tuesday afternoon.
A random Tuesday.
Yeah. How much of your daily exhaustion, that deep, bone-weary feeling you get by 4 p.m. where you just want to crawl under a blanket, comes from waiting for someone else to act a certain way before you allow yourself to feel peaceful?
Probably a lot.
How much energy are you spending trying to perfectly arrange the heavy furniture on a pitching ship? How many times today did you hand the pen over to someone else and silently beg them to finish the script the way you wanted them to?
It is a staggering amount of human energy wasted on an impossible task.
It really is.
It's the primary source of emotional fatigue for the vast majority of people, especially those who are highly sensitive to the emotional temperature of their environments. The arduous work of trying to please people into behaving well is a losing game. It's a game where the rules are constantly changing, the other players don't care about the score, and you're not even the one rolling the dice.
Which brings us to the ultimate million-dollar question. If trying to control the external script is a trap that drains our power, and if arranging furniture on a rocking ship is physically impossible, how do we take the pen back?
Right.
If we can't change the ocean, what on earth do we do? And this is where the philosophy introduces a concept that is both ancient and profoundly practical for modern life. The ultimate solution is to see the opportunity in being like water.
The concept of being like water is the linchpin of this entire approach to life. True wisdom lies in adapting yourself to the situation, rather than demanding the situation or the people within it adapt to you.
So going back to the ship analogy.
Exactly. If we go back to your ship analogy, being like water means you stop trying to nail the heavy furniture to the floor. Instead, you learn how to find your sea legs. You learn how to move with the pitch and roll of the deck. You adapt your stance, your expectations, and your center of gravity to the physical reality of the environment you are currently standing in.
So how do we actually execute that in the real world? Because it sounds highly poetic to say, be like water, but the philosophy gives us some very specific analytical instructions on the mechanics of this process, right?
It does. It argues that to control the narrative, you must first consciously accept the situation you have chosen to stay in. And once you've truly accepted it, you must analytically notice the variables at play.
Let's break down that first step, because it requires a radical, almost uncomfortable level of self-honesty. Accepting the situation you have chosen to stay in. It's a tough pill to swallow.
Very tough. Often we find ourselves in deeply frustrating situations, like a challenging corporate job, a difficult family dynamic, a noisy living environment that we have, on some foundational level, chosen to remain in.
Right. We stay for the paycheck, we stay for the familial obligation, we stay for the cheap rent. Even if it feels difficult, our presence there is a choice.
The absolute first step to taking back your power is to stop resisting the reality of that choice. You have to look around and say, I am on this ship, the ocean is stormy, the deck is rolling. This is the reality I have selected for now. You stop fighting the mere existence of the storm.
Right.
Wait, let me stop you there, because I know exactly what someone listening is going to say to this.
Okay, what's that?
If I just adapt to a toxic boss who is stealing my ideas, or if I just accept a partner who is constantly criticizing me, aren't I just becoming a doormat?
Ah, yes.
Where is the line between flowing like water and just completely giving up and letting people walk all over you? It sounds a lot like passive surrender. What's fascinating here is that the philosophy anticipates this exact hesitation, and it counters by arguing that being like water is the exact opposite of surrender.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's not about being passive, and it is certainly not about foolish compliance. In fact, lacking the wisdom to adapt is actually how you guarantee you will be treated like a doormat.
Wait, explain that.
Well, when you fight a situation you cannot change, you drain all your strategic energy, you become highly emotional, your judgment clouds, and you lose your advantage. Being like water means maintaining your essential nature, your core identity, your values, your heavy weight as an individual, while moving strategically and fluidly through the hostile environment.
Oh, I see. Water doesn't stop being water just because you pour it into a jagged, ugly glass.
Exactly.
It just changes its shape to fill the space without friction. But it retains its weight, its mass, its fundamental chemical properties, and over time, water can carve through solid granite. It's the most powerful force on Earth, but it achieves that incredible power through continuous fluid adaptation, not through rigid, brittle resistance.
Or consider the alternative. If you are rigid like a sheet of glass and you are struck by a sudden, unexpected force, you shatter into 1,000 unfixable pieces.
Right.
But if you are water, the force passes right through you, and you immediately reform, completely unharmed. When the philosophy advises you to consciously accept the situation, analytically notice the variables, it's instructing you to become a cold, strategic observer.
Okay, so instead of reacting emotionally to the narcissist at work who just took credit for your presentation.
Exactly. You accept the reality.
Right.
This person is a narcissist. This is a known variable in my environment. They will inevitably try to take credit because that is what their programming dictates.
Wow, that takes the emotion right out of it.
It does. Once you accept that reality without emotional outrage, you can analytically navigate it. You start watermarking your slides. You see your boss's boss on the initial draft emails. You adapt your strategy. You haven't surrendered to them at all. You have outmaneuvered them by refusing to let their predictable behavior disrupt your internal peace or sabotage your goals.
You stop being shocked that the rocking ship is rocking. You notice the variables. You say, okay, the ship pitches violently to the left every 10 seconds. Therefore, I will walk on the right side of the hallway.
Precise.
You're still walking exactly where you want to go, you're still achieving your objective, but you're utilizing the variables instead of fighting them. You have taken the pen back, you're writing the script of your own internal reaction and your own strategic movement, rather than demanding the outside world rewrite the laws of physics for your personal comfort.
And this critical transition from emotional resistance to analytical observation is the core mechanism of reclaiming your power. But it requires a fundamental shift in how you process the world internally, minute by minute.
Which brings us to the strict internal hierarchy that must be established within the mind. Because deciding to be like water sounds amazing in theory, sitting here in a quiet room.
Sure, theory's easy.
But what does that internal processing actually look like in real time? In the heat of the moment, when your heart rate spikes because someone is actively pushing your buttons, how do you actually execute this fluidity?
It's the ultimate test.
The insights we're exploring provide a very strict hierarchy for the human mind. The rule is this: you must approach situations analytically first, using pure logic. Do not let emotions guide your logic. Instead, let your emotions serve as the reward for your sound reasoning.
This is perhaps the most critical instruction in the entire framework. Analytically first, logic. And crucially, don't let emotions guide your logic.
Right.
When we encounter a frustrating situation, a driver cutting us off, a snide comment from a relative, our default human response is almost entirely emotional. We feel a flash of anger, we feel alienated, we feel the burning injustice of it, and then we use our highly developed logic to justify our emotional reaction. We build a meticulous analytical case for why we have every right to be furious.
Oh, we use our big, beautiful brains to basically write a master's thesis on why the other person is a complete jerk, and we are the innocent, aggrieved victim. We construct an airtight legal argument to defend our bad mood.
We let the emotion take the lead, and we use logic as its indentured servant. But this philosophy argues this is entirely backwards. You must force logic to the front of the line.
Front of the line, got it.
When a situation arises, the very first filter it must pass through is analytical observation. What are the actual variables here? What is the objective reality of the situation, stripped of my ego? What's the most effective, frictionless way for me to adapt and move through this obstacle? The logic leads the charge. And then once the logic has safely navigated the obstacle, you allow the emotions to reward the outcome.
Let them generate patience, gratitude. That is such a fascinating total reversal of how we normally operate. The emotions become the pleasant byproduct of a well-navigated situation, rather than the volatile, explosive fuel driving your initial reaction.
Let's dive deep into the biological and physical mechanics of why this hierarchy is so utterly essential. Because this is not just abstract poetry. This is deeply rooted in human biology.
Okay, lay it on me.
When you let logic lead, when you analytically assess a situation and choose a strategic, adaptive response, you avoid the trap of blind, panicked reaction. You successfully navigate around the obstacle. And because you navigated it smoothly, without shattering your internal peace, your emotional system is suddenly freed up.
It's not bogged down.
Exactly. It doesn't have to process rage or frustration or deep feelings of invalidation. Instead, your emotional center can look at your successful navigation and generate a genuine sense of accomplishment. It generates patience for the next inevitable obstacle. It generates gratitude that you possess the wisdom and the tools to handle the chaos. If this entire process is running on wisdom, well-managed thoughts, and precise timing, it consistently, reliably generates positive outcomes.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's the physical stakes of enforcing this internal hierarchy. The core argument here points out that thoughts under good management generate positive outcomes, not simply because it's nice to be positive, but because thinking effectively and efficiently generates a way of perceiving the world that maintains a positive attitude.
Right.
Which generates patience and crucially ensures you are not generating stress hormones. We are talking about cortisol. We are talking about adrenaline coursing through your veins, elevating your heart rate, and wearing down your immune system over years of chronic frustration.
This is a matter of biological self-preservation. When you're constantly resisting the external world, when you're constantly outraged that people aren't reading your script or accommodating your needs, you are living in a perpetual state of sympathetic nervous system arousal.
Fight or flight.
Yes. Your fight or flight response is constantly being triggered by incredibly mundane, everyday social interactions. You're bathing your organs in toxic stress hormones day after day, year after year.
That sounds exhausting.
By enforcing this strict internal hierarchy logic first, strategic adaptation, and then emotional reward, you are literally protecting your physical body.
Right.
You're preventing the generation of those stress hormones before they even start. You remain biologically calm. Your heart rate stays steady. Your prefrontal cortex remains fully online.
I want to try and visualize the strict hierarchy because understanding the order of operations is so important. Think of your mind, your entire consciousness like driving a highly advanced luxury car.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You're in the driver's seat, cruising down the chaotic highway of life. In this analogy, your logic is the steering wheel. It is the brakes, the accelerator, and the sophisticated GPS map glowing on the dashboard. Logic is what keeps the heavy machines safely on the road, navigates around deep potholes, merges safely into traffic, and ensures you arrive at your destination in one piece.
So what are the emotions in this car?
Now, what are the emotions? The emotions are the incredibly comfortable heated leather seats. They're the premium immersive sound system playing your absolute favorite music. They're the perfect climate control, keeping the cabin at the exact right temperature.
I like this visualization. Let's push it further.
If you operate the car properly, logic is firmly gripping the steering wheel. And because logic is keeping you safely on the road and avoiding collisions, you get to sink back into those heated leather seats, crank up the great music, and genuinely, deeply enjoy the journey. The emotions are the reward of a well-driven car. But what happens if you decide to flip the hierarchy?
Oh boy.
What happens if you say, you know what, this Mozart symphony is so beautiful and this leather seat is so soft, I'm going to let them steer the car for a while.
You veer into oncoming traffic and total the vehicle immediately.
You crash into a concrete barrier. Because beautiful music cannot steer a 2-ton machine. A heated leather seat cannot read a detour sign or hit the brakes when a deer jumps into the road. When you let your emotions guide your logic, you're letting the sound system steer the vehicle.
It's a guaranteed disaster.
You're going to crash because you are reacting entirely to the internal sensation of the music rather than the objective external reality of the road. Emotions are a wonderful, magical, essential part of the human experience. They're what make the long journey worth taking in the first place. But they make absolutely terrible navigation systems. They're the reward of the journey, not the GPS.
That is a phenomenal encapsulation of the concept. And when you learn to relentlessly keep logic at the steering wheel, your timing in life becomes impeccable. You become highly effective, highly adaptable, and incredibly resilient. You're no longer being battered around and getting whiplash from the chaotic, emotional driving of everyone else on the highway.
Let's turn this back to you, the listener. I want you to do a quick audit of a recent conflict you had. Maybe an argument with your partner about chores, a frustratingly passive-aggressive email chain at work, or a tense, awkward moment with a stranger at the grocery store.
Just pick one.
Think back to that exact moment of friction. In that split second, were your emotions driving the vehicle, violently swerving the steering wheel while logic sat in the back seat terrified, trying to justify the erratic driving?
Usually, yes.
Or were you securely navigating with logic, observing the variables of the other person's behavior, adapting your speed, while your emotions sat safely in the passenger seat, ready to reward you with a deep breath of relief once you successfully avoided the crash? It is a highly uncomfortable question to answer, honestly.
It's uncomfortable because we all let the music steer the car sometimes. But asking that question and catching yourself in the act is the very first step toward reprogramming how your mind fundamentally operates. Which brings us to the next profound leap in this philosophy.
I can't wait.
When you actually put in the grueling work to perfect this logic-first, adaptable mindset, something much deeper changes than just your reaction to an email. You don't just learn a neat psychological trick. You change the underlying operating system of your consciousness.
Right. The insights we're exploring use a very specific, very evocative metaphor for this total transformation. It argues that mastering your thinking, this relentless process of logic, adaptation, and emotional reward, is absolutely essential. It compares it to mastering how to learn more effectively, but on an even deeper, more foundational level.
Yes.
It calls this ultimate mastery reprogramming the rootkit kernel CPU of your life.
Let's unpack that technology metaphor, because for those who might not be deep into computer science, the implications are massive. A kernel, or a rootkit, is not just a regular piece of software. It's not an app you download from the store to make your battery last a little longer or a new filter for your camera.
Right, it's not superficial.
Exactly. In an operating system, there is user space, where the apps live, and kernel space. The kernel is the absolute core of a computer's architecture. It operates at the deepest, most privileged level of the machine. It dictates how the physical hardware communicates with the software. It controls the memory allocation, the processor speed, the very reality of the machine.
It's the boss.
It is the boss. If you install a rootkit, it alters the foundation so profoundly that it can even dictate what the antivirus software is allowed to see. It writes the fundamental laws of reality for the entire system.
So, mapping that onto human perception, by relaxing your thought stream, by refusing to hand over the pen to the narcissist at work, by forcefully prioritizing logic over the intoxicating rush of an emotional reaction, you aren't just applying a temporary mood boost app to your day.
No, not at all.
You aren't just putting a psychological Band-Aid on a bad interaction. You are going down into the deepest, most privileged foundational level of your own neural architecture. And you are rewriting the foundational code of your reality. You're changing the very hardware to software communication of your brain.
You're literally changing the algorithm that decides what incoming data means. Before this reprogramming, the old kernel would take in data, let's say your partner, using a sharp tone of voice. The old code would instantly route that auditory data directly to the amygdala, the emotional center.
Initiating panic mode.
Right. It would trigger the fight or flight response, flood your system with cortisol, and cause you to snap back defensively before you even realize you're speaking. The new kernel, the rewritten rootkit, takes that exact same auditory data, routes it first through the analytical prefrontal cortex, categorizes it logically as, my partner is stressed from work, this tone is a variable, not an attack.
Wow.
It prevents the release of cortisol and allows you to respond with strategic, unbothered calm. It is a fundamental biological reprogramming of how you exist in the physical world.
And the extrapolation of what happens when you achieve this is mind-blowing. Because when this root level change is fully installed, the philosophy makes a massive, almost unbelievable promise. It states that when you master this, your life can truly feel like a dream.
Like a dream.
Think about that specific phrase, like a dream. What does that actually mean in a practical Tuesday morning sense? To me, it implies a profound sense of weightlessness. It implies that the heavy, dragging, exhausting friction of daily life has been completely removed.
When we dream, we often experience an incredible fluidity of motion. We move from scene to scene, from challenge to challenge, without the arduous, grinding effort and emotional friction required in our waking lives.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When the promise is made that life can feel like a dream, it is describing the experience of walking through the chaotic world without any internal resistance. When you're no longer fighting reality, when you're no longer desperately trying to force the actors to read your script, the friction simply evaporates. You create an invisible, impenetrable buffer between yourself and the chaos of the external world.
The world is still totally chaotic, the storm is still raging, but you're moving through it like water flowing through a jagged ravine. The rocks are incredibly sharp, the drop is steep, but the water doesn't care. It just flows seamlessly around them. The water isn't stressed out by the existence of the rock.
No, it's not.
It doesn't write an angry email to the rocks. It just smoothly, effortlessly adapts its shape. That flow state, that total lack of friction, would absolutely feel dreamlike compared to the exhausting, rigid, stress hormone-soaked reality most of us trudge through every day. Everything would feel slower, colors would seem brighter, decisions would be clearer, and the sheer volume of manageable energy you'd have left at the end of the day would be staggering.
It's the ultimate form of internal mastery, and it requires fully recognizing that you are the sole architect of your internal experience. But here's where the concepts we're exploring take a truly fascinating, counterintuitive turn.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
Up until this point, we've been focusing entirely on internal shifts. Reprogramming your own kernel, managing your own thought stream, dealing with your own cortisol levels. It has been a very solitary, almost isolated internal process. But there's a truly shocking external byproduct to all of this internal work.
The ironic social twist. This is absolutely my favorite part of the entire philosophy. We've established that you stop trying to force people to accommodate you. You stop the arduous, exhausting work of people-pleasing. You pull back your energy, you manage your own thoughts, you put logic in the driver's seat, and you become this adaptable, fluid force.
Yes.
Now, logic would dictate that by pulling back your desperate attempts to please people, they might drift away, or they might become even more difficult because you aren't catering to them anymore. But the reality is the exact opposite.
It really is.
When you stop forcing people to accommodate you, your friends, your family, and even your coworkers will begin to deeply appreciate your powerful presence. Your mere existence will actually comfort them.
It's a beautiful, profound irony. Think about what is happening on an energetic, subconscious level during human interaction. When you are desperately seeking external validation, when you're silently demanding that people accommodate your comfort zone, you are projecting a very subtle but very real energy of neediness, and demand. People can feel it.
They really can.
Human beings are incredibly sensitive to unspoken expectations. Even if you're being outwardly sweet and nice, they can feel the heavy expectation weighing on them. They feel the tension of you holding the pen out, silently demanding they write the exact right words to keep you happy.
Yeah.
It makes people defensive. It makes them uncomfortable and guarded.
It's like standing next to someone who is holding a tightly coiled spring and staring at you intensely. Even if they have a giant smile on their face, you are just waiting for the spring to snap. You can't relax around them. You have to carefully monitor your own behavior so you don't accidentally trigger them. It is exhausting to be around someone who requires you to manage their emotions for them.
But when you reprogram your rootkit, when you become fluid like water, you completely stop projecting that demand. You drop the coiled spring. You're no longer requiring anyone to behave in a certain way for you to be okay. And the ironic result, people feel an immediate, profound sense of relief in your presence. Your calm, your deep adaptability, your total lack of emotional volatility becomes a rare source of stability for them. They feel comforted by your powerful presence because it is a presence that demands absolutely nothing from them.
And it goes even deeper than that. Ironically, once you adapt and stop seeking validation, people will start to behave towards you the way you've been desperately trying to find people who would behave. They create a space that doesn't alienate you, a space that lets you be your true, excited, expressive, analytical self. They literally start acting exactly how you always wanted them to act, only after you completely stop trying to make them do it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, it makes perfect logical sense.
Yeah.
People naturally gravitate toward and naturally accommodate those who aren't projecting stress or demanding change from them.
Right.
When you create an internal space of non-judgmental observation and adaptation, you inadvertently create an incredibly safe external space for others. They lower their own defensive shields. They don't feel the need to act out as wonderful narcissists or put up defensive walls around you because you aren't threatening their autonomy with your hidden demands. By freeing yourself from the need to control them, you free them. And in that freedom, they organically offer you the understanding, the grace, and the accommodation you were previously exhausting yourself trying to force out of them.
But I have to emphasize something here because I don't want us to sugarcoat the reality of what this requires. There is a very hard pill to swallow right in the middle of this beautiful promise. The philosophy looks you right in the eye and says, you've had it backwards this whole time. It's you first that you need to put the work in to change. That is a brutal, humbling realization. We spend years, sometimes decades, thinking, if only my boss would change his management style, if only my partner would change her communication habits, if only society would change its priorities, then I would finally be at peace. And the truth is, no. You have it completely backwards. You are the one who has to change first.
It's a deeply humbling realization, and it is a monumental amount of work. Reprogramming your rootkit is not a weekend project. Overriding decades of ingrained emotional reactivity, letting go of the ego's desperate demand to be validated, choosing cold logic over the highly familiar, intoxicating comfort of righteous anger. This is grueling, arduous internal labor. It requires constant vigilance.
It's the hardest work you will ever do. But the reassurance that follows that hard truth is incredible. It promises that once you surpass this challenge, once you actually put the grueling work in to change yourself first, you will understand things there aren't words to describe about the resulting clarity you'll have. Clarity beyond words.
Yep.
The mental fog lifts entirely. You realize that your profound peace was never locked inside a vault that someone else held the key to. You were holding the key in your own pocket the entire time. You just had your back to the door while you yelled at everyone else to come open it for you.
The clarity comes from the complete realization of ultimate personal responsibility, which is incredibly empowering once you get past the initial sting of realizing you've been doing it wrong your whole life. To fully lock in this new rootkit, we have to move beyond metaphors and look at a deeply analytical breakdown of exactly how our reality is constructed. We need a schematic of human perception.
Right. If we're going to successfully rewrite this rootkit we've been talking about, we have to understand the code we are trying to change. How exactly does our brain construct our perception of reality in the first place? This is where we look under the hood of the car we were driving earlier. The profound ultimate realization we must reach is that your world starts and ends entirely in your head. Now, it doesn't mean the external physical world doesn't exist. The chair is physically there, the storm is real, the person talking to you exists in space and time. But your reality, your subjective emotional experience of that world is entirely constructed internally.
The world is out there, but mere memories of it are what drive a highly complex engine of adaptation. Let's meticulously walk through the 5-step chain reaction of this engine, because understanding this cascade is the absolute key to maintaining the relaxed thought stream. The engine has 5 distinct sequential stages. Stage 1, memories. Your memories of the external world are the fuel that gets injected into the engine.
Let's use a highly specific, real-world example to track this cascade. Let's say you're in a high-stakes meeting at work, and a coworker, let's call him Dave, interrupts you while you are making a crucial point. That is the objective external event. Dave spoke while you were speaking.
Okay, poor Dave.
Now, stage 1, memories. You don't just experience the interruption purely as raw data. You immediately, subconsciously access your massive database of memories regarding Dave. Dave interrupted you last week. Dave has a loud, booming voice. Furthermore, you have deep-seated childhood memories of feeling disrespected by people who talked over you at the dinner table. All of those memories are the highly combustible fuel injected into the engine.
The memory of past events instantly colors and distorts the present data, which leads directly to stage 2. This adaptation of memories defines your perceptions. Because of your loaded memories of Dave and past instances of disrespect, your perception of this exact moment in the meeting is not simply Dave spoke while I was speaking. Your perception instantly becomes Dave is deliberately trying to undermine my authority in front of the department head because he doesn't respect me. The raw data has been transformed into a highly loaded, threatening perception.
And then the engine moves to stage 3. Perceptions drive your belief system. If you perceive that Dave is actively undermining you, that perception feeds into and reinforces a much larger, darker belief. You start to deeply believe, my workplace is a toxic, cutthroat environment where I am not valued, and my colleagues are actively working to sabotage my career.
And beliefs do not sit idle. They demand action. This brings us to stage 4. The belief system informs your habit system. If you fundamentally believe your workplace is toxic and people are against you, your brain develops defensive habits to protect you. You stop sharing your innovative ideas openly. You start hoarding information. You develop a habit of preemptively snapping at Dave in the break room, or you develop a habit of retreating into resentful silence during collaborative sessions. Your internal invisible belief has now solidified into highly visible, ingrained behavioral patterns.
Which leads to the final stage, stage 5. Ultimately, your habits drive your actions and inactions. Your habit of defensiveness leads to the specific action of sending a highly passive-aggressive CC everyone email to Dave later that afternoon. Or the inaction of refusing to help him when his project is failing. And guess what the result is? Those actions cause Dave to actually dislike you, which creates new, genuinely negative memories, and the engine starts all over again, spinning faster and more toxically each time.
That is the perfect, tragic illustration of a runaway, unmanaged engine of adaptation. It is a closed loop of increasing friction, deteriorating relationships, and surging stress hormones. The memories color the perceptions forge the beliefs train the habits, and the habits dictate your actions.
So, what does this all mean? If I understand the schematic, how do we actually stop the runaway engine? How do we use this knowledge? The philosophy points out that we need to learn how different behavioral frameworks operate, like the MBTI or Myers-Briggs type indicator, see them in play, and use them to adapt to anyone and find our niche. And to be clear, using a framework like the MBTI isn't about taking a fun internet personality quiz to find out what kind of pizza you are. It's about giving your logical brain a robust analytical schematic to understand why humans behave the way they do, so you don't have to take it emotionally.
Exactly. Whether it's MBTI or a deep study of cognitive psychology or any other robust behavioral framework, the goal is to introduce objective cold logic into that 5-step engine. And you specifically have to insert that logic at the gap between stage 1 memory and stage 2 perception.
Let's run the Dave scenario again, but this time let's run it with the new rootkit kernel installed, utilizing analytical observation and a framework like MBTI. The external event happens. Dave interrupts you in the meeting. Stage 1. Memory. You remember Dave interrupts people often, but instead of letting that memory drive a perception of deliberate disrespect, you insert analytical logic. You hit the brakes. You say, I have studied these behavioral frameworks. Dave is a highly extroverted, fast-processing personality type who thinks out loud. His interruption is not a calculated, malicious attack on my authority. It's simply a manifestation of his specific cognitive processing style. He literally thinks by speaking.
Brilliant. By inserting that logic, you have changed the perception entirely. The perception is no longer Dave is attacking me. The perception is simply Dave lacks impulse control but is highly enthusiastic about the topic. And because the perception has profoundly changed, stage 3 changes. Your belief system remains completely secure.
Yeah.
I'm a valued member of this team, but I'm currently dealing with a chaotic communicator.
Right.
Because your belief is secure, stage 4 changes. Your habit becomes one of calm, assertive boundary setting rather than a defensive, resentful retreat. And finally, stage 5. Your action is to simply raise your hand calmly, smile genuinely, and say, Dave, I love that enthusiasm. Let me finish my thought here, and then I'd love to hear your input.
And the result of that action,
Yeah.
you don't generate a single drop of cortisol. Your heart rate doesn't spike. Dave doesn't feel attacked or shamed, so he immediately apologizes and waits his turn. You maintain your powerful, comforting presence in the room. You have successfully adapted. You've found your niche in the process, remaining your excited, expressive, analytical self, completely unharmed by the friction of the external world. You look around the room and realize that everyone else is running their own messy, unmanaged engine of adaptation. And instead of taking their actions personally, you use logic to navigate the variables peacefully. You're the water, effortlessly flowing around Dave the Rock.
That is the ultimate mastery. When you truly internalize that the entire 5-step cascade happens entirely within the confines of your own mind, you realize that you hold the ultimate control over your experience of reality. You cannot control what Dave says, you cannot control the storm on the ocean, but you have absolute total control over whether Dave's words are processed as a threat or simply a variable. And that control is the secret to profound, unshakable peace.
Which brings us, inevitably, to the end of our journey today. Let's take a moment to look back at the incredible, transformative path we have walked down in this deep dive. We started by identifying the trap, that exhausting, arduous trap of handing over the pen, of begging the outside world to validate us and perfectly arrange the furniture on our rocking ship. We saw how attempting to control the script of other people's lives is a guaranteed biological recipe for burnout and resentment.
We then explored the profound antidote, the ancient wisdom of being like water. The immense power of consciously accepting the reality of our situations, refusing to act the fool by fighting the ocean and adapting ourselves strategically. We learned that true resilience isn't rigid, brittle resistance, but fluid, frictionless accommodation of the variables around us.
We established the strict, non-negotiable internal hierarchy required to make this work. Ruthlessly prioritizing logic at the steering wheel, refusing to let our beautiful emotions guide our navigation, and instead allowing those emotions to sit in the passenger seat, rewarding our good driving with patience, gratitude, and a blissful lack of toxic stress hormones. We talked about the monumental, grueling task of rewriting the rootkit kernel CPU of our minds, upgrading our foundational software so that life can finally feel like a frictionless dream.
And we marveled at the beautiful, ironic twist of social dynamics. That the exact moment you stop demanding people change to suit you, your calm, powerful presence naturally comforts them, and they begin to organically offer you the very space and understanding you had previously sought in vain. Finally, we disassembled the engine of adaptation, tracking how memories build perceptions, which cement beliefs, forge habits, and dictate actions, proving once and for all that our reality is entirely an inside job.
It really is.
This raises an important question, a final thought I want to leave with the listener today, building directly on the assertion that your world starts and ends in your head.
Go ahead.
If everything we've discussed today is true, if your entire reality, your deeply held beliefs, your daily behavioral habits, your actions, and the literal physical stress hormones coursing through your blood at this exact moment is just the result of a cascading chain reaction driven entirely by your internal perceptions, then a staggering truth emerges. The only actual tangible difference between living in a chaotic, exhausting world and living in a peaceful, dreamlike world isn't the external world itself. The world is exactly the same either way. The narcissists are still there. The storms are still raging. The only difference is the literal physical state of your relaxed thought stream. You hold the absolute staggering power to transform the universe you experience simply by pausing, breathing, and relaxing the grip on your thoughts. So if you possess that kind of universe-altering power, what is the very first thought you are going to consciously let go of today?
Wow, that is the question, isn't it? What are you going to let go of right now? It's time to stop sitting in the dark, fuming at the actors for ruining your play. It's time to stop throwing your back out trying to nail the furniture to the floor of a rocking ship. Take back the pen. Keep analyzing the variables. Let the logic steer the car, and let the emotions enjoy the ride. Remember, true peace doesn't start when the world finally decides to behave. True peace starts from within, the exact moment you decide to become the water. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.